Well, we do have a major transfer portal domino that just went down. This is breaking here today. Dillion Gabriel officially going to Oregon. I'm not going to pat myself on the back, take a victory lap, but pretty much right when came out that Dillion Gabriel was transferring, I said Oregon was the number one option, even with the odds coming out yesterday saying Mississippi State had the best chance at him. He does end up at Oregon, and it makes perfect sense for the Ducks considering their situation with Bo Nix. He's going to be gone. They're joining the Big Ten. They've got a huge game next year hosting Ohio State. I will say I do find it very curious that a team like Ohio State was not in on Dillion Gabriel. I do view him as the best one-and-done QB, possibly the best quarterback right now, or I guess he's not in the portal anymore, but this portal cycle, Dillion Gabriel, I have him ranked very high. I think he's the number one QB. He was really good at Oklahoma. He was really good at UCF, and they had a really good year, but either way, he is going to Oregon. Again, makes perfect sense. Oregon needs a new quarterback. We know how big they are in terms of their NIL fund, and that is really the first major domino. You can look on different sites. Is he the number one quarterback, the number three quarterback, the number six quarterback? He's ranked different everywhere, but I do think he is going to be really good for Oregon as a one and done. The only issue you would have if you're Oregon and some of these other schools, there's no cohesion with a one and done quarterback, meaning you're breaking him in and then it's not like you're getting him for 2 years. That can be a little bit annoying, but either way, that is happening. I would say right now I would look at Cam Ward possibly going to Ohio State. Also Miami in the mix, but I am looking for that to happen at some point soon. Very likely before the bowl game, considering, these things seem to be happening, going down really quickly. You've got DJU, possibly Maryland involved with him. And then we've got this weird quote from Urban Meyer. It leads me to believe maybe Urban Meyer has a relationship with Kyle McCord and his dad. He says, on Kyle McCord entering the transfer portal now, the first thing that's important to note, the way this worked, Ryan Day went to Kyle McCord and his dad, and this is all speculation, but this is very likely what happened. He said, look, we're not guaranteeing Kyle McCord the starting job, or this is what Ryan Day said. We're not guaranteeing your son the starting job. I've lost to Michigan 3 years in a row. I can't hitch my wagon to him. If he wants to come and prove that he's the number one quarterback, we are going to be taking in a transfer. He's going to have to compete and fight for it. And Kyle McCord said, listen, I'm not interested in competing for this job. I'm already on year 4 of college football. I need to be guaranteed, the opportunity to start. And so it was a situation where Ryan Day said, all right, do what you got to do, and Kyle McCord entered the portal. And now Urban Meyer seems to be pissed off that Kyle McCord is leaving. That made no sense. I'm still trying to comprehend it. I tried to take a position of Kyle or even Ohio State, and it just doesn't compute. He had a good year. I mean, they beat Notre Dame as a first-time starter, 3 new offensive linemen. Yeah, no, Kyle McCord had a good year for sure. Unfortunately, good is not the standard at Ohio State. If you're a quarterback in Ryan Day's offense, you need to be great. You need to be putting up Heisman numbers, and Kyle McCord was not. He didn't play that great in the Michigan game. I came out of that Michigan game saying this game was not Kyle McCord's fault. It was the defense's fault because they didn't force a single punt in the second half. But still, we all knew Kyle McCord was going to come in against Michigan and really kind of make some bad throws, and that's exactly what happened. Again, I don't think it was his fault, but he's just not good enough to lead Ohio State and really be a multi-year starting QB at Ohio State. It's a tough situation, but kind of a surprise there from Urban Meyer considering how Kyle McCord looked this year, and then referencing a win over Notre Dame where Ohio State's offense was terrible. The defense won them that game. Kyle McCord should have thrown a game-sealing interception that went right through one of Notre Dame's defensive backs' hands with 40 seconds left on that final drive. Kind of a weird thing to reference there when the offense scores just 17 points. And then we do also have this bombshell coming out. Michigan finalizing massive contract offer for Jim Harbaugh amid potential NFL interest, according to reports. Now, this is supposedly, you can see Michigan working on a lucrative contract extension in hopes of keeping Harbaugh as the coach of the Wolverines through 2028. It is a 5-year, $55 million deal. It would make Harbaugh the highest paid coach in the Big Ten and the second highest paid coach in college football. Now, this whole thing is a complete mess because of the situation surrounding Michigan, the NCAA investigation, the Harbaugh suspension. Harbaugh is still likely, even without the cheating investigation with Connor Stalions, Harbaugh is still likely to be suspended by the NCAA at least one game, possibly more. Michigan self-imposed a 3-game suspension this year when the NCAA said, let's table it and talk next year, because they had a ridiculously easy non-conference schedule and they were trying to get the NCAA to go light on them next year and possibly only give Harbaugh a 1-game suspension so he would be back for the Texas game, which is Michigan's huge non-conference Week 2 game at home against very likely Quinn Ewers and that Texas team, which is probably going to be ranked top 4 or 5. But with this situation, it's just how many, when you talk about a contract extension like this during an investigation, this is a complete clown show in my opinion. It's a complete farce. There's so much unknown. There's so many opt-outs and clauses that are going to be baked into a contract like this that Michigan can get out of, like at the drop of a hat, like a flip of a switch, they're out of the contract. They don't have to pay Harbaugh anything with all the clauses that can be baked into it if something happens to where the NCAA puts out crazy sanctions. I mean, like, think about the portal situation surrounding Michigan, and I get it's kind of weird because Michigan is very likely going to need a portal QB, but they really can't do anything right now because they're still in the playoff. But it just seems so strange how quiet things are for Michigan when it comes to the portal, and I think part of the reason is because of the unknowingness surrounding Michigan's standing next year. Are they going to be facing a bowl ban? I mean, what even happened to Central Michigan? I guess we have to kind of just assume that Central Michigan and Michigan colluded, which allowed Connor Stalions to be on the sideline, considering Central Michigan seemingly is uncooperative. They don't want to give up any information. I'm guessing there was a relationship with Harbaugh and Central Michigan's head coach that likely allowed for Connor Stalions to be there. That's just my speculation. And now they want to hide it and say, oh, this never happened. And I did find it interesting. There were a lot of people saying this because of the Florida State situation with them being left out 13-0. That really gives Michigan kind of a pass, and no one was really talking about Michigan and all of the cheating and all of that stuff. And I understand it's very complicated, how much of a competitive advantage is it actually? I just think the idea of an assistant coach going borderline, like spying with little glasses on a sideline of an opposing team in week 1, that's just completely off the rails and out of control. And there's going to have to be some severe discipline for something like that. So Michigan doing this contract extension, baking in a bunch of clauses to where they can get out at any point, and it's just posturing to say, oh, we're behind Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, obviously they're behind him. Michigan has beaten Ohio State 3 straight years. They've won the Big Ten 3 straight years. They're going to want to extend him for probably like 10 to 15 years for the rest of his coaching career, I'm sure, based on how well he's been. And we will have to see what Harbaugh ends up doing, possibly after the Alabama game, possibly after the national championship, depending on how far Michigan does make it. And then the final thing, we had this released, a lot of outrage over this. It is the nation's best receiver, the Biletnikoff Award, and Marvin Harrison Jr. taking it home. Remember, Marv was kind of robbed of it last year with Jalen Hyatt winning it. And now people are saying, Malik Neighbors put up better stats. What's the criteria when it comes to this award? Is it best versus most deserving? And what I'll say on something like this, guys, it's always a combination of best and most deserving. That's how it always is. Take a look at last year, for example, when Jalen Hyatt won it. Tank Dell, I'm sure a lot of people know who Tank Dell is from Houston, playing really well right now with CJ Stroud, unfortunately suffered an injury. Tank Dell had way better stats than Jalen Hyatt, but Jalen Hyatt won it because the award is a combination of best plus most deserving. Marvin Harrison, when you're talking about him playing with Kyle McCord, Ohio State, the game script being completely different because the Buckeyes have a good defense, so they don't have to throw a lot in the second half because they're up in most of their games, versus an LSU team who has a horrible defense, one of the worst in the country. That's gonna bloat Malik Neighbors' stats because they're constantly throwing in the second half. Nothing against Malik Neighbors. Very likely he's going to be the number 2 receiver off the board, but they wanted to get Marvin Harrison Jr. an award like this. He probably should have won it last year, and he does win it this year. And it's not just, who put up the best stats, because Tank Dell should have won it if that's your criteria last year in terms of that. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.